Hey YouTube, I'm going to try something a little different here. You see, I've been toying for several months with a few creative ideas, a few of them for a few years. I know that a number of these have probably been tried before. Indeed, it would surprise me to learn otherwise, but humor me. Now, if you're looking for my regular fare about logic, science, and religion, let me warn you now that you're probably going to be disappointed on this unless you click away now. So by all means, save yourself. Okay, now that they're gone, no doubt, as no doubt most of you know, I am a Star Trek fan. I'm also quite interested in the idea of parallel universes. That is, places exactly like this one, except that something happened differently in history, resulting in a different string of unfolding consequences forward of that event. This was explored just a little in the 7th season TNG episode Parallels. Here it was explored just enough to give the imagination something to toy with. Worf finds himself jumping from universe to universe, and in one, he finds that he and Counselor Troi had become romantically involved and gotten married a few years previously, and in the next universe, that they had a couple kids. In some universes, Data's eyes are yellow, but in others they're blue. I'll link this episode's Wikipedia article in the description box. In Star Trek canon, it was very soon after the Third World War, in which 600 million people died from the use of nuclear weapons, that Zefram Cochrane first broke the light barrier for humanity, leaving a warp signature for the Vulcans to pick up and trace back to Earth. And once they realize that humanity has achieved warp drive, they opt to make contact, and the rest is history. I'm positing a parallel universe in which Cochrane himself did not survive that war. And as a result of all the widespread destruction, humanity is saturated by an attitude of aversion to the exploration of matter on any smaller a scale, since such would undoubtedly unleash even more powerful forces. Of course, with no further exploration of smaller units and spaces, humanity turns its sights in other directions, and centuries later has achieved all the other technical and scientific feats that Star Trek fans are acquainted with. Consider for a moment the Replicator. What if humanity had that technology and cold fusion, and both were portable? Think of it. What if you had this device that could provide you with however much you could use of whatever supply you needed, that could use virtually anything as a power source, and it was portable? You could survive anywhere, for any length of time. You could pitch your tent in the middle of the Sahara, out of sight of all civilization, and survive there indefinitely, unencumbered by concerns about dehydration or starvation. You could survive indefinitely in a cave miles underground. If you ended up somehow in the middle of the ocean, nowhere in sight of land, you could use one of these to replicate all the tools and raw materials you would need to build a boat and give it a motor. Well, no problem, carry two. If one breaks down, use the other to replicate the tools and parts you need to repair it. This would be an age of complete logistical freedom. This feat of technology would blend all the conveniences of urban living with the freedom of nomadic living. So it seems to me that many people in the world would opt to return to that, would opt to spend their days just roaming the planet. I suspect I probably would. Well, human beings are hardly instinctively solitary. No, we're instinctively social. This nomadic living would of course be done in tribes, and every tribe would have medical personnel. This is where they would come in. Here let me draw your attention to the 5th season episode of TNG called The Inner Light. This is the episode in which Enterprise encounters an alien probe, which, right at that moment, begins transmitting a signal, and Captain Picard slips into a coma. He is unconscious for only about 25 minutes, but during that time, he lives out most of another man's entire life. He has a wife, children, even a grandson. He's part of a curiously idyllic community. In the end of the episode, it's revealed that this has all been a simulation created by the people who composed the civilization within it. They realized that they faced death as their planet slowly became uninhabitable. They didn't have the technological resources to rescue any of their people, but they did have the resources to assemble and launch the probe. in the hopes that it could find someone who, after decades immersed in their civilization, could teach others about it, thereby giving that civilization a sort of new life. This episode gets me a little choked up sometimes. The life Picard lived, the connections he made. It turns out it was all a final desperate plea from that civilization. We're gone now, but we lived once. Please, don't forget us. This concept is also explored in the 4th season DS9 episode called Hard Time. This episode opens with an explanation of events which predate the episode, with O'Brien visiting an alien race called Yagrathi. These people apparently are a tad paranoid and suspicious, and when O'Brien, in customary engineer's fashion, asks too many questions about their technology, they arrest him and charge him with espionage. Word reaches the Federation, and they immediately set to work clearing up this little misunderstanding, but that takes a few hours, by which time O'Brien has already experienced 20 years of a time-compressed, simulated reality in an Yagrathi prison. This episode is sort of the dark side of the inner light. I picture education taking place within a time-compressed, simulated reality. You spend only a few hours in it, but during those hours you experience years going to school and studying the curriculum of your choice. Then you emerge with whatever education you selected on your way in. Of course, spending years away from friends and family can be quite psychologically taxing, so no one is permitted to go through it alone. This is just part of what strikes me as a very interesting setting for a story. What do you guys think?